bar in Toledo, across from the depot. On a bar stool she took off her ring. I thought I'd get closer, so I walked on over. I sat down and asked her her name. When the drinks finally hit her, she said, I'm no quitter, but I finally quit living on dreams. I'm hungry for laughter, and here ever after, I'm after whatever the other life brings. In the mirror I saw him, and I closely watched him. I thought how he looked out of place. He came to the woman who sat there beside me. He had a strange look on his face. The big hands were calloused. He looked like a mountain. For a minute I thought I was dead. But he started shaking. His big heart was breaking. He turned to the woman and said, you picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille, with 4 hungry children and a crop in the field. I've had some bad times, lived through some sad times, but this time your hurting won't heal. You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille. After he left us, I ordered more whiskey. I thought how she'd made him look small from the lights.
I'm one of the co-founders of Denver Startup Week and introing this panel. And this is what I'm really excited for. I mean, I think a lot of stuff that we talk about during this week in the technology space, sometimes is a little out there. You know, I was on a panel yesterday about robots in restaurants, and that application, maybe isn't quite ready yet. But when it comes to generative AI and what we're seeing in education, it absolutely is there and has been already for a number of months. And this is coming from someone who's been sitting down with his 6th grader using ChatGPT to generate ideas for his science fair on it. So it's out there. So what does that mean, right? What is that going to mean for the educators? What does that mean for the students and the rest? And so with that, I'm pleased to introduce Taylor McLemore, a good friend, and the moderator for this panel.
Thanks, Ben, and appreciate you all being here. Exciting to kick off the Wednesday of Denver Startup Week. As Ben said, my name is Taylor McLemore. I'm a partner at a new venture fund called Future State, where we focus on investing and backing founders that unlock human potential through learning and work. So I am very fortunate that I get to work with people that are driving the innovation that Ben was just talking about. And I bias a little bit more towards the adult education, career-connected education, and workforce pieces of this. But I'm really excited that we've got a panel that really transverses all of education. So with no further ado, let's start on this side. Adil, let's hear your background, and also, what are your connection points to education?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here, and thanks for the folks who joined this morning. My name's Adil Khan. I'm the founder of MagicSchool.ai. I have spent my lifetime in education, starting as a teacher in middle schools and high schools, and then eventually becoming a school leader. I founded a new public high school here in Denver called DSW Conservatory Green High School. It's in the Central Park neighborhood. Deeply proud of it. It's an incredible place. It's the top performing public school in Denver, and serves kids who really need it. The majority of the kids who go to our school are from low-income backgrounds. And just recently in U.S. News and World Report was rated one of the top 10 schools for students who has with students from a majority of low-income backgrounds. So really proud of the work that we've done there. Most recently, the new venture that we're working on is called MagicSchool.ai, and it's a generative AI platform for teachers. And it makes generative AI accessible to educators, captures the highest leverage use cases in K-12 education in one place, and allows educators to kind of harness that power and use it in their classroom. And our mission is to fight teacher burnout and help them get their time back and live more sustainable lives. We know that the teacher shortage is a crisis in our country, and we have teachers leaving the profession at just very disappointing, unjust rates for our students. And we think AI is a transformative technology that can help solve that crisis.
That's wonderful. I appreciate you being here and part of the conversation. Geeta, over you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Geeta Verma. So I've been an educator all my life. I was a science teacher in middle and high school, and I'm wearing two hats right now. So currently, I'm a professor here at University of Colorado, Denver, STEM education. And my research has been working with minoritized students creating access opportunities in STEM fields. I'm also co-editor-in-chief of a journal, Journal of Science Teacher Education. The other hat I'm wearing is the founder of LivedX. LivedX stands for Lived Experiences. LivedX is an AI-powered platform that enables students to document their lived and learned experiences and convert them into college credit. So we work with both high schools and college students. And we're pushing on the notion of academic achievement beyond courses and beyond, we want to make sure that students coming to us from various backgrounds, that background, their way of being is valued, and not only valued in terms of like, yes, we value you, but actually it becomes part of the academic transcript. So we have partnered with University of Colorado, Denver to assign these college credits. It's a highly reduced tuition. So for high school students, it's only $74 per college credit. For college students, it's only $119 per college credit. So they can bring these college credits into the program of study and also simultaneously create a portfolio of transferable skills, which is what kind of stacks up to these college credits, and walk away with different outcomes that allow them to succeed in college pathways and career readiness.
That's so powerful. And as like an example, if a student comes from a household that speaks multiple languages, whereas a lot of colleges look for you to start your second language. If you already speak a second language, why not give credit for it? It's examples like that, right?
Exactly. So it's credit for prior learning, including lived experiences and learned experiences.
So neat. Thank you, Geeta. Beth, over to you.
Hi, I'm Beth Redden. I'm the CEO and chairwoman of BAST AI, and we differentiate by showing our work. So everything that we do, we provide explainability and transparency. My background from an educational standpoint is all in industry. I was the chief data officer for the largest IT group in IBM. It was 110,000 people in 175 countries. And we needed to perform a workforce transformation, so we stood up an IBM Services Academy, which is a very interesting thing to have done. But from an educational standpoint, what we really looked at was the ability to use artificial intelligence to understand where somebody is at and be able to relate some of the new information or the certifications and having that type of precision in order to be able to say, oh, hey, you know CentOS, we're gonna give you a Red Hat certification. And using artificial intelligence in order to personalize that learning really allowed people to get through the certifications that were proctored and very hard. We trained 23,000 people in 16 months.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here, Beth. So excited to dive into this conversation. We put the title out there because I believe it's an exciting moment, but like exciting in different ways, right? It depends which headline you're reading, whether this is, and I appreciate that this panel is full of optimism, but also grounded reality of what AI means for education. But if you go read the headlines, it's the end of the world or the beginning of a new world, right? And it just depends on perspective. So I'd love to start out there and whoever wants to jump in first, what's one thing that you're really excited about that you think is truly positive about how AI is going to influence education, and specifically what part of education? So who'd like to kick off?
I'll go. I think the more ways that we can learn how learners learn, that variability, the more we will be able to generate content in different channels so that we can actually have different types of learners. And I think that the possibilities are not just oral or visual or kinesthetic. I think that there's so many other ways that we really can think about learning. And I think we haven't even tapped the surface of what we're doing with learning. I do think that there is a massive shift happening due to the transparency as well as the both statistical and semantic models, where we're really starting to see the linguistic transportation layer. When we are looking at language and the cultural variations that are in language, I think that that is probably the most exciting thing, because those carry signals, and signals for all kinds of things that we can start to really understand the human condition. And my favorite quote is, AI is really the electron microscope for the human condition.
That's great. Geeta, what are you seeing, especially kind of building on Beth's point of different learning styles and ways that we can reach the learner where they're at as an individual? What are you seeing?
So I'll talk about it both from K through 12, high school and higher education. So as you probably know, both groups of students are post-pandemic are really facing mental health challenges. And for us to create all the pedagogical, instructional opportunities for students, we have to make sure that they come to the classroom feeling that they're ready. I just heard this morning on NPR that Cherry Creek actually has opened a school catering to students who have severe mental health challenges just for them, because they were not succeeding in regular schools, right? So I feel like we have to take a step back and meet our students where they are and create opportunities for them to engage with educational opportunities, right? So AI can really play a big role in that. For example, in our platform, so we do R&D as well as the product. In our R&D, we are trying to figure out, based on the data we have, can we predict mental health challenges for these students? And can we alert the school districts about not only individual data, but group data on a weekly basis, saying, hey, this particular group of students are struggling, because we have done some R&D based on the research that came out with veterans, saying looking at the social indicators of health, 13, and we can actually, our data can actually, and our AI actually can predict these mental health challenges. So if we can intervene at that point, the educational outcomes are going to be better, right? So that's one way we can think about the good use of AI. At the higher education stuff, higher education, the way we as professors think about, there are groups of faculty who are like, no AI in my class, to like, I totally embrace AI. And what I'm seeing in syllabi is like, faculty feel comfortable, like, yes, you can do 25% of your work using AI. And what this 25% allows students, like if you are a second language learner and you struggle with composing your initial ideas, AI can really help you there, right? So it's not like, but the product you create is not going to be like totally finessed product, because if you look at ChatGPT and other outcomes, some of those responses are really cheesy. You can't use it as it is, right? And so but you get a starting point for a lot of students who actually struggle with starting with, whether it's math or writing or composition. This could become a tool to actually get students moving forward. And I think that's how faculty are using that in their classroom, including myself. I tell my students, use this as a starting point, and then you have to develop this paper into this particular format. But I also have to teach students saying, you have to now create a reference for AI. So all the APA on the writing styles kind of thing, they're going to revise all that. And we're asking students to share the prompt that you used to create the outcome that you have and what revisions you made. So I think many of us are beginning to integrate, but then there is a group of faculty that feel like, especially people who teach composition writing, they feel like, how is this going to work? So it's a very open area right now. But there are opportunities for more instructional, pedagogical, including mental health growth for students, and AI can really play a really important part in that.
That's great. Adil, anything that you would add just as it relates to how we meet the individual where they're at?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that AI can do is actually augment the ability of teachers to do certain things. So I gave this example of there are a lot of best practices we learn as educators that we know are the best things to do for our students, one of which is differentiating course materials. So you have a student who's behind grade level in reading, a student who's on grade level, a student who's above grade level in reading in your class, and you're aware of that. You have the data. You understand that that is an issue you're dealing with, but you just need to create your lesson for the day, right? So like, even though you know that, like, and that is best practice and you're aware of it, well, you don't have the capacity to build those materials to support those students on different levels. So it just doesn't happen. So like the education quality that a student gets because of a limited capacity of a singular adult who is in front of them is not aligned with what we know as best practice. So if you had an AI assistant who could make leveled course materials for you immediately, that thing that just wasn't happening prior is now happening. Right? So like that is an improved educational experience for the student because we're assisting the teacher in a really meaningful way. What gets me most excited about the future of learning though, these are like table stakes things, right? The things we're talking about. Like these are just the things that we should be doing already. We already knew that. We just can't because we didn't give the capacity to the teachers. And that's what we're focused on. I think that there's a real optimism in a world where teachers come into a classroom rested, ready to be in front of their students, building relationships with them every single day. Like that's the magic of learning. Like I think everyone in this crowd can probably point to a teacher who made a big impact on your life, and it was because they had a strong relationship with you. They might have taught you something special, but it probably came because they had that relationship. And to be able to come into a space and be more willing and able to do those things because you're rested, you're prepared, and you had AI to assist you is the world I'm excited about. And then when it comes to the student angle of this, there's this really cool idea that like, I always use this example for myself. So like, I'm a principal, I guess now I'm a tech founder, and I've always wanted to be a movie director. And when I was a kid in high school, I watched all of like the Oscar, winning movies from the last 100 years, and I was just fascinated by it. And I had no resources at all that could have allowed me to make a movie or understand even like to start the process of being a screenwriter or any of those things. And in the next year, we're already seeing the beginnings of this. Like AI could have told me what are the first couple steps in like writing your first screenplay. AI could actually create the video, could create the motion picture, right? Like I have this like, I see a future that like in the next 2 or 3 years that like we're watching in a movie theater something imagined from a 14-year-old's brain, right? Like the biggest movie of the year is something that like a kid who we know kids are so much more creative than adults, especially when they're kind of growing their mind and thinking of different possibilities. To be able to imagine something, and you see this the beginnings of this in like the image generators like Midjourney, and there's even video generators that are like kind of not amazing yet, but you can see the potential. Those things evolve, and then you can build a whole motion picture from your imagination. How incredible would that be? How much more can kids do, right? Like how much more can they produce? That's the world that I'm excited about.
That's so neat. And to your point, just to add some, context to how close at hand that is, I recently was in a conversation and heard from an executive at Electronic Arts that builds video games. They have internal models, generative models, because you have to, in video games, you build worlds, right? And whether that's at the level or different levels that connect. But previously, what would take a level and sort of world designer somewhere between like a month to 3 months can be generated in 15 minutes with prompts now. Mm-hmm. So like it's not like, oh, this might be coming. Like we're here. Like the future you're describing is like, it's still early. It's not ready to like be produced by a single person at like a Hollywood level production. But like, this is not 5 years out or 10 years out. Like this is now. Super insightful perspectives. I really appreciate that. I'm going to kind of ping pong us from things we're excited about to things that we're concerned about, and not just a hyperbolic AI is going to take over, but since you all are experts building it, like, what do you think are the concerns that we should be having active discussion on? And I want to kind of prompt this first one. What ethical lines do we as a society need to be focused on for where AI is appropriately being used versus where it is taking us in the wrong direction? So maybe we'll go reverse direction this time. Do you want to kick us off on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're seeing models improve dramatically really quickly from language, like the language models, like ChatGPT, GPT-4. If you haven't used it, is absolutely incredible in its current form. And people are predicting that Google's coming out with a model this fall winter called Gemini that's supposed to be more powerful than ChatGPT. And of course, OpenAI is not going to sit on their hands. They're going to do something, that they're going to train a new model, and it'll be, this arms race for, the technology to become even better. And even in its current form, it's incredible. So, biggest concerns, like there's an election coming up, and like we know that Russia meddled in our elections last time around without this transformative technology and these AI agents that can be deployed and like really sound like real humans. So like that's a real threat to democracy if anyone who had bad intentions could get a hold of the technology, which they will be able to, and there are open source models that are available to anyone. So that's a concern, I think. And then two, like in the practical sense of using it in the professional world and in the way that we build our product, we think about like we need to educate instead of just try to get it into people's hands and like wow them. So like, this might not be the most sensible from the perspective of somebody who's trying to, build a product and make sales, but we have like some pretty strong best practices for usage when you join and sign up for our product that say, if you're gonna use our product, you need to check for bias because AI can be biased just like humans. And just like we should probably be checking for bias more in our human world, you should be doing that when you're generating something that you're gonna put in front of students. You should check for factual accuracy, just like when you do a Google search. I think a lot of people rely on Wikipedia still, right? When we don't know that those things are factual. That's something that you need to do with AI. And it's easy to not do that because it lulls you into the sense that it's perfect, because it does come out pretty well most of the time. And then you also just need to do the things like still be a professional. This requires human in the process in the current state that it's in, and probably should always. And the more that we take human out of the process, even with how good the models will get, that's when the scary future comes, right? When we're just saying, well, AI does this better than me, so let's just let it do it, right? And that's where like things, I think that we can imagine. We have enough movies that can help us imagine that future, but those are the things that concern me.
Yeah, I think those are critical risks for us to be thinking about individually, company, community, national levels. Gita, what stands out to you as some of the bright lines we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're thinking about is, so when ChatGPT came out, how many school districts just banned it, right? You can't use it. So the historical educational debt that our students experience being in the virtue of where they're born, that structural inequities can become more. So students who were using school computers, school internet, couldn't access ChatGPT, but students who had internet and ChatGPT at home could do that, right? So the question is, the AI literacy is a big thing. If you want to use this tool, you need to learn how to use this tool, and how does that become part of your educational opportunities is something that we think about. Because if every student doesn't have that opportunity, then you'll have this have and have-nots of the educational equity will kind of grow into that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when we started computers or any of those things, there was a kind of a learning curve to like learn how to do this. These technologies have scaled up so fast, but so students don't know how to use it. So that's the thing I was talking about, how to teach students to say you can use it, but you can ethical about it, you can be transparent about that. That learning opportunity needs to be as well. Because if we don't have that, then we will have students start using ChatGPT and produce it as their work. And can you do that? So the journey, that platform that allows you to create paintings, there was this painting that came out in a art contest, and then the person won. And now it's in the court saying, can you claim authorship of AI created work? And so that's something that we have to kind of be thinking about. So those are the two things that I think about.
Those are great. Beth, what about you?
So I wrote a whole book on this, so I will try to be brief. It's called AI for the Rest of Us. It's very, very good. 2017, I was part of the team that set up IBM's ethical principles. And when I wrote the book too, everything was so negative. And I'm like, we need to positively reinforce humanity and give people safety and good, safe rules in order to be able to use artificial intelligence as a partner. And these three rules that we all came up with, there's so many different layers, but fundamentally, I'm gonna just talk to you about the practicality. If artificial intelligence is created to augment a person, you are going to get adoption. If you are creating artificial intelligence to control people or to replace them or reduce headcount or reduce your cost, it's not going to go very well from a lot of different reasons, and it's really going to ring false too. And I could completely say more about that, but it's definitely something that we want to be ubiquitous because we do have an access problem. And I always look at it is if we want a representative sample of humanity, we need 1.6 billion people, or 20% of 8 billion people, to actually be using an AI literate and understand how AI works and fundamentally be creating AI with their culture. We're a couple billion short. And I think that the second rule is something that's really, really interesting to me because data and insights belong to the creator. And I think that they can only belong to the creator. Only you knew what you were doing when you put that question in. And when we really start to get into harvesting the data that is used in AI models, the questions, that's really going to show where people actually have expertise or do not have expertise. And I always tell people to go out to GPT and ask it about something you really understand and you really know well. Interrogate it. And when we built the data science profession, the purpose of data scientist is to prepare data to be interrogated by domain experts. And so if you are a domain expert in something, go figure out how it's working and be curious about what it's actually telling you. And then how could you actually use that, as all of us have given examples of utilizing that in a good situation. The third one is, again, from my standpoint, it's a practicality. And based on data that I did a qualitative assessment of 2,500 companies and 16 different layers within each one of those companies, you can stick humans, teams, countries, groups into 4 quadrants. People are either using AI myopically, just add AI on it, put AI into it, I'll get funded. Adding AI for risk-based situations where they're in, they have regulations, so they do the minimum for, meeting regulations or meeting GDPR or meeting some of the things that are coming up. The third one, it gets really interesting where people are doing it for opportunistic. If you start to explain and be transparent about where you get your data and what is going into the models and what models you're using and what user you are intending to augment, you not only get adoption, you get what looks like China, where people are actually accelerating the ability to utilize it in spaces we're only dreaming of. Every medical student in China walks in and they get their very own personalized AI assistant. And that is because they have a central authority that says you do not build companies that keep the data or don't tell you what data and don't explain what the models are doing. The very last one is strategic, where every human being in your organization and your team understands these principles fundamentally, because ethics comes from the word ethos. How do we set up the entire atmosphere so students, teachers, leaders follow what we do, not what we say?
Very helpful. And this is a little bit sort of technology strategy question, but considering we're at Denver Startup Week, I think this will be useful. There's lots of different patterns that are playing out where the large companies building infrastructure layer AI are going very horizontal, very broad. I think we're starting to see more vertical specific applications, not massively large models, but highly specific models or use case or industry and those sorts of things. What direction do you think AI is going to take within education? So I'll stop there. Who'd like to kick us off?
I think we're going to see students become teachers, teachers become students. You're not going to be the sage on the stage. You're going to be the guide by the side. And I think that the construct of dialogue and dialectics, we're going to go back 2,000 years and go, wait a second. People who can ask really good questions, that is knowledge. And the conceptual model that I've created is data is an artifact of human experience. Somebody either creates the data or creates a system that creates the data. Information is data plus context. Knowledge is information plus relationships, how that information relates to each other. That's why we have knowledge graphs. Wisdom is in stories and how we tell those stories and how those stories can actually relate that information to us personally. And understanding how artificial intelligence is augmenting people, it's already changing us. It has already changed how we interact, how we speak, our vocabulary, everything. Who's studying how it's changing how we are behaving?
Any other thoughts on just sort of where it's going to go versus?
Well, we're building that verticalized AI software right now with Magic School. So Magic School is a generative AI platform specific for the K-12 education vertical. And what, the thesis that we have is that it's really important to understand deeply the workflows of the industry that you're serving with your AI product, and having a lifetime in education helps me do that. And then embedding yourself within the workflow of that vertical. So for us teachers, we understand the way they plan, the things they're doing outside of classroom, and we're building our tools in alignment with the ways that teachers actually work. You're seeing this actually happen a lot in healthcare too. A lot of new startups in healthcare are doctors who are building AI products because they understand the workflow of a doctor and the different things that happen along the way. So I think that it's a different kind of tech, and one that I think a lot of traditional tech folks are going to try to jump into without that domain expertise. And it doesn't mean you can't, it just means that you need to really honor that in a different way of really getting to know your users, understanding how they're using it within their workflow, and becoming a part of that new workflow that you're creating. We're essentially, truly building the future of work, right? We're trying to disrupt a centuries-old process of the way teachers have done their work and say, no, actually, we're going to sit with you and do it with you as an AI assistant, and that can be applied to any industry, right? We're saying, doctors, no, you can do this a little bit more efficiently. You can do this more intelligently. It can augment the way that you're working. But in order to do that well, you need to really understand the way that someone works, and folks who have experience in those spaces have a distinct advantage in building those products.
That resonates so much for me, and it's at the center of the investment thesis that I've really been trying to drive forward over the last few years, which is technology is a tool, but lived experience is what helps you be in a position to solve human problems. So very, very, very thoughtful. I appreciate that. Geeta, what about you?
I think in education space, higher education, I think it's going to be in concentric circles. These verticals will come. The first ones that will come doesn't disrupt anything that's existing, because education systems are very stable systems and it's really hard to move them along. So for example, a lot of universities have adopted chatbot. You'll be surprised how late we get to the game, right? It doesn't disrupt anything that the universities are doing, but it allows students to engage with this chatbot. They're going to collect data. If this helps them with retention, any of those things. I think the next circle would be where we are in terms of LiveDex, which is we're not disrupting anything curricular. We're not bringing new STEM courses. We are creating an alternative pathway that complements and augments what students are doing, right? So there's a vertical there. So there are different AI products that can come into that circle. The core circle is where you have instructional, curricular, pedagogical stuff. That is very interesting. In K through 12, high schools, this is very popular. You can have edtech companies that teach STEM education or robotics, and schools will adopt that as part of supplementing what's happening in the classroom. In higher education, not so much. But so I'm curious about what those verticals will be in higher education in the core educational activities, because at the end of it, it has to help the students, whether it's retention or graduation. It helps to help the students to earn more money. So that's what, through LiveDex, we are giving them additional tools so they can actually go out and increase their earning potential with the certificates and the college credits they earn. So those are some of the things, because higher education is a very complex organization, and there's so many moving parts. So I myself, I'm curious about what those verticals will look like.
Yeah, I appreciate your analysis of the different layers of adoption, and that I think it will be interesting because they move at different speeds, and how much that pushes some along, how friction will push back, all those dynamics will be really interesting to watch. I want to go back to our original prompt of what excites you, what gives you optimism for AI. And Beth kicked us off with the first one, so Geeta, I'll go to you for the second one. What have we not touched on about AI thus far that makes you really optimistic?
Yeah, I think I'm very optimistic about ways that we can augment student learning and students' ways of being. And so it's very exciting, but it's kind of a little bit scary as well. Because how do we get students to position themselves that they can use these technologies to promote themselves, to advance themselves, but also not lose out on core educational experiences. So one of the challenges that composition writing teachers think, and this is a good research question, do we actually need to learn to write in a certain way, or can we learn from writing that's happening from AI and then develop those skills? In the traditional sense, that's all. We've all taken courses, we learned how to write, all those structures of writing and all that. Do I have to do that, right? Now, if we find out we don't have to do that, can you imagine the amount of friction we've removed from a student's learning journey? And you can be trained to be an editor and still be good at your job, right? I don't know that, but I'm really excited about. Similarly for math, right? Math and science. Do you really need to memorize the formulas and photosynthesis and all of those things? Or can I be trained to make sense of the scientific information? And that's really important because look what happened during COVID with vaccine hesitation and vaccine denial. There's this scientific literacy piece that we need to be addressing because we teach science in the classroom in the terms of content as if all these people are going to become doctors and engineers, but not all of them become that. But they need to be scientific literate so they can lead productive lives and make these decisions when these come along. So can AI augment that learning more than the content learning? I'm excited about that. Same in math, yeah, you need to learn algebra and all that, yes, but the application of that is more important. So can we move these students along so it becomes much more connected with their lives? So those learning opportunities that AI can present, I'm really excited about that.
Well, first of all, I love that you wear two hats because I think it's few and far between when you hear an educator talking about education as friction. So like that's a beautiful synthesis of the tech founder in you and the educator in you that is truly student-centric, which is asking the question, how does this serve the student? And it also, your point about what do we need to do, you know, it's like as all of the ChatGPT stuff was rolling out, I don't know if everyone saw them, but the pictures of like the math teachers picketing when graphing calculators came out, right? It's, you know, and it's not the same thing, to be clear, but it also, it's, you know, history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it rhymes. And I think it's good to look back at some of those moments. So Adil, as a principal, in a core part of your heart of hearts, how does what Geeta said just resonate with you?
I think Geeta getting to the point of like authentic experiences for students and those becoming the most powerful learning experiences that students have very much resonates. And the need for learning, you know, what came to mind as you were speaking was this idea of the American education system for the last century has been about standardization. It's been, you need to learn this to take the SAT to get to X, right? And I see a future where like the opposite is true, right? Actually, you need to cultivate your uniqueness. You need to cultivate your own voice because AI can do all that other stuff. So like if you're gonna write something really compelling, it needs to come from you and it needs to be informed by your experiences and your voice. We're gonna start differentiating, not based on the structure of the writing, rather how inspiring it is. How does it give us a window into someone's world? The things that we analyze, I was a literature teacher, right? So like when I was an English teacher, we talk about why the writing's beautiful, right? And I think that that's gonna be more applied to all contexts, right? I wanna hear your voice in the way that you wrote. The structure matters, but only so much. And that's a world that I think we can be more excited about. We're sitting in that higher level thinking area way more than we're sitting in these lower level thinking, skill building areas. And what does that mean is that we should hopefully become better at those things. We should have higher quality art, right? I also just like to continue on to the question, like imagine a teacher, a public school teacher in America getting an hour-long lunch. Wouldn't that be incredible, right? Like there are these things that like they seem intractable. They've been things that we just kind of live with, like that, you know, what if we, you know, I spent like last summer in Europe and I was just shocked. I was, you know, in America, we just don't even think that you could go picnic for lunch. You know, there's these things that, why don't we build these into society, and why don't we utilize this in a way that lets us live lives that are more about life and less about work? So I think that there's a lot of optimism that I have in that regard. And it's a future that we can, I mean, in addition to a 14-year-old creating a feature film that's the most popular in the world, I also think that we have a world where we're just in better relationship with one another. We're spending more time as humans connecting to each other, and AI might do the opposite of what we think it's going to do and let us be more human.
That's beautiful. Beth, what comes to mind for you?
So I've been a musician, an archaeologist, a linguist, a data scientist, an information architect, an entrepreneur, a chief data officer, a chief analytics officer. I've been so many different titles, things in my life. And one of the things that I have always maintained is I don't really fit in the box, whatever it is. And I think that all of these disciplines that we have in life, physics, chemistry, you know, whatever, it is the language, it's the jargon. You know, education has its own educationese, you know, and if you know the language, I used to do it where I spoke IT, so I can walk into any CIO and they're like, "Oh, you're part of my tribe," and I'm like, "Yes, I speak IT." So it's about these disciplines should never have been separated in the first place, and I think that it's the fluidity between them, and you know let's say the disestablishment of the elitism that comes with knowing the jargon.
It sounds like a beautiful future as well. Well, we're going to preserve some time at the end for questions from the audience. We really appreciate you all being here, being a part of Denver Startup Week. But Adil, I need to give you the chance to share. Is there anything that we haven't covered yet that is a point of deep optimism for you on AI? We've already covered a lot of great stuff, so that, you know, we can also just jump to audience if you prefer.
Yeah, let's jump to audience.
Great, let's do that. Wonderful. We have microphones. Are these two? Let's rely on the pros to tell us how they want us to do it. Because I think we're recording, streaming, some version of capturing history.
Hi there, this is a great panel. I really appreciate everyone coming, and I'm John Emerson. So my question is, I'm gonna sort of build on Beth's notion that there is sort of a language which within each domain, and if you speak that language, then, and so within this, there are some general LLMs that everyone's building their product on. I'm wondering, to what extent are you building unique LLMs versus building on a core platform and then tuning or using some various methods of referencing documents to build your product? That's it.
Yeah, so our AI is in-house built. We actually did 1 year of robust R&D, which was basically qualitative research where we collected data and we used frameworks coming out of research, and we created a LiveDex framework. We recruited students and experts to bring them to the table, and then we collected data and annotated that data. So it was basically human-led to begin with. And then we had enough annotation, we gave it to the machine learning scientist, and they created the AI. But we've always had human in the loop model. And so it's basically targeting a very specific vertical of transferable skills that is coming from research. So Harvard has this project called EASL project, and they're mapping 42 frameworks in this particular space: employability, social emotional, all kinds of stuff. And we're using frameworks from that. So our AI is very in-house. And now we're looking at the AI and said, what can it predict? What else can it predict? So one of the things that I talked about was mental health challenges. So our AI team looked at the veterans' data and see if, so they had an AI thinking about the social indicators of health, and we wanted to see if our data can kind of give us that same information. So the prototype we did was basically, yes, our AI actually can predict mental health indicators for these students, in addition to transferable skills. So there'll be other verticals that will come out of the same data and the same AI.
I think would be great to hear from each of you because it's a wonderful question.
Yeah, so we are built using, currently we are using OpenAI's LLMs for our platform. And to the question around like how do we contextualize it, like there are different versions of the API that we use for OpenAI, and one of which gives a large context window. So for more specific tools, we can build kind of like these mega prompts around like, let's give you an example of something really great in this domain or this kind of tool that we're building. And that actually does as well, if not better than fine tuning right now. OpenAI just released in the last 2 weeks fine tuning with their 3.5 model, and early tests with that indicate that like just a really great prompt can do the same thing. So that could probably change in the future. I think that we're always exploring. Right now we have a big OpenAI bill that we're paying, so we're exploring kind of bringing that in-house and thinking about how we make it more contextualized for the users that we have. We now have over 1.5 million generations on the platform, so we have a lot of data that we can kind of pull from and kind of do some reinforcement training to kind of build more contextualized things for educators. But for so many of the tasks that we're doing, a really, really highly contextualized model doesn't necessarily make sense, and OpenAI's model is still the leader. Like it just is. So, yeah.
So I have a pretty strong point of view on this. I've been building artificial intelligence or NLP scripts, ontologies, knowledge graphs for 20 years. And when Andrew Ng figured out that you could use a GPU to process machine learning 100x faster in 2016, 2017, it really started this statistical brute force race of needing large data and large compute in order to get statistical certainty. There's a whole other world that built the internet with the World Wide Web and the W3C standard with semantics. And semantic inference, you need very little data, but you need high quality data, like the stuff that Geeta is talking about. And what we do at BAST, and we do this very specifically because one of my very first use cases is augmenting medics on the field to reduce their cognitive load. So medics on the field need high quality, precise information, verbatim, and then they also need that variability. So we do both. And we ground data that is specific from like a protocol so that that doctor or that medic or that pilot has the specific protocol that they will always be able to rely on. And then we use language models, not necessarily large language models, but language models that are built for that specific context, so that we can push it into a container and ship it on site without internet. So a lot of what we're doing is very specific and precise, mainly because I want to show the world that there's this alternate narrative. You can have your cake and eat it too, but it does require work to make sure that you're articulating the data that you're putting in, dropping a coordinate so that you can get it back out to say, this is the paragraph, this is the text that caused the machine to say this.
Exciting that we've got examples across the board. So, and also, to me, a big part of it, it's the story of all technology. It's a tool, and the question is, which tool do you need for which job? And that you can, usually in the best cases, bring multiple tools together to build a better outcome. But you have to understand the tools. Yes?
Yeah, so that was like a really technical question. Mine is very much not that.
That's wonderful. All questions are welcome.
So I'm currently a student at the University of Denver. My name is Amani. I'm in my 5th year. I have professors across the spectrum who are like, don't use ChatGPT. I hate ChatGPT. Others who are like, please tell me the prompt. Tell me if you paid for it or not, because I really want to know like what it spits out. But I guess like my question has transferred from kind of like what do you see higher education doing to where do you see AI being able to transform this public school landscape as far as short minimizing the divide between low-income students who are not actually able to get the education or have access to that to the students who are already being able to access it really really early on. So like how do you see AI being able to transfer that divide over the next few years?
So I'm going to go first, but I want Geeta to talk about what she's doing with LiveDex because it's super cool. I think that because of the amount of compute and resources that are required to generate large language models, they should become a utility, just like a public library. So every community will have their own language model for that community, the Bronx, LA, Denver, and it will have information that is curated like a librarian would curate, and it will be publicly funded. I think that that's exactly where it needs to go because of the amount of 15 swimming pools of fresh water for one training cycle of a large language model. So we need to make this something that is more community driven in order to be able to take advantage of it and give everyone access in that community.
Yeah, so I think about, the transition that happened from landline to cell phones. So here, people had, landlines, then transition was very kind of gradual, but in other parts of the world, landlines just went away and people went from landline to cell phone. I feel like AI is that moment, and that's why it's so important to make sure that all students are getting the tools to mindfully and productively use AI. So the AI literacy is going to be so important because if students have that, knowledge and skill set, then we can help students kind of move along, whether it's math or science or any of those gatekeeping, courses and areas. I think we can make that huge transition from landline to cell phone. So I agree with Beth that it needs to be localized. But more importantly, there needs to be advocacy from the communities to make sure that this gets in the hands of all students, not only students that have the access through parents or communities or the schools they go to. So that's very important. So coming back to what we're trying to do with LiveDex is to help students understand what strengths they have. So it's basically a very asset-based platform. So because there's so much societal narrative about deficit students, like what deficit you have, you didn't get the math, you didn't get the science and all of those things. I think we need to help students understand the assets they bring to from their lives, and then provide learning opportunities that is customizable, adaptive, and all of those things. And I think AI can do that.
Yeah, so I mean, this is super personal for me. I'm a low-income immigrant kid growing up. My whole career has been dedicated to educational equity. I founded a school that was focused on educational equity, only served schools with majority low-income kids and kids of color. And I think this is an enormous moment that potentially exacerbates some of the gaps that we see from rich to poor. And I think that there are some critical things that we need to approach and start thinking about. One of which is some of this is very relatable to the way that the world has already worked. Even in my, and we have a thesis as what we're building at Magic School is we're starting with teachers and we're trying to get the broadest swath of teachers to use the product, because once they start using it and they start making it a part of their work world, then they're going to start demanding it for their students. They're going to say, look, like if this is a tool that helps me do my work and I'm supposed to be preparing my students for the future of work, there's no better advocate for their students than the teachers who serve them. So our eventual end goal is that this is now a partner for students in the classroom as well, and it can do a lot of things to help them. But educating them on how to use it well is extraordinarily important. Like, who is adopting AI right now? Rich tech people, right? Like, they're the only people who are using it regularly. So whose kids are starting to get to use AI? rich white tech people's kids. So like, if you're working a working class job like my parents did, my parents certainly would have never had any exposure to ChatGPT or anything like that. So how are you learning that at home? And the same thing happens today with, if you're a parent, if you have a parent who's a professional, you have exposure to all these careers, you understand all of these things, and it gives you dreams that you couldn't have if you didn't have that upbringing, right? But I think that the optimist in me is that, well, now AI can give you exposure to those things that maybe you didn't have. You had dreams about. I talked about being a director. Like, I'm sure that if I lived in Southern LA and I had a lot of people around me who were doing that, I'd have a little bit more window into insight of like what that career would be like. And now I could ask ChatGPT that. Now I could create those things on my own. So I think there's positive and negative here. But if we don't get this thoughtfully into the hands of students, then we're gonna make that gap even larger. And then the last thing I'll share is I think that there's something incredibly powerful about the technology for developing countries. So outside of the US, where education is just a privilege, it is not something that is given to you or a public service. And we know there are gaps even in American education, but the idea that like apps like Khanmigo now, Khan Academy's mission is one that I think we all can support, of getting high quality educational resources to everyone. But now it's high quality educational resources to all parts of the world, and you can do that through your cell phone, right? Even if you're in a really small developing country, and now you also have a tutor to help you through, right? So like you can achieve at really, really high levels, things that like we know that, the smartest kids in math, like when I was an educator, even they needed help when it came to like higher level calculus. They needed a tutor, they needed a teacher. And now you can have an AI teacher with you when you're trying to get to those higher levels. So it unlocks a more competitive landscape globally, which is incredible. And then also, once these things start evening out, it gets to that last point of what will make us unique. It's probably going to be our lived experiences. It's probably going to be our voices, and cultivating those for our students is going to be really important in the future.
Great question. And I think we'll have time for one more question, but just to kind of piggyback on the brilliance of the panel, things that I think we can all do as citizens is ask your elected officials what they are doing to ensure that there's infrastructure in place for equitable access, and not just equal access to technology, broadband access, things of that nature, because we still, we're very fortunate as a country, but broadband access is correlated to zip code, which is correlated to income still. And if we don't solve that infrastructure layer, we're not going to get there. So we need to challenge our elected officials to do it. And then at a local level, with whatever schools you're engaging with, ask them what tools they're using. Show the teachers and the administrators support that you're excited about these sorts of things. That's what's going to drive demand, and that's what's going to pull these opportunities through. So I think the most critical thing is that we all speak up and say that we care, and that we, even though it might be fear-inducing at times, that we're saying the most important thing we can do is actually address that. So it's a great question. Thanks. One more question. I see someone in the back.
All right, this is, I would like each of you to react to the following statement, if you don't mind. It's hard to have empathy at scale.
Great, and we have 3 minutes, so you each have 1 minute for your response.
I think everyone can relate to the very human condition of having a sibling, a parent, a mother, a brother, a sister. And I think that, hard to have empathy at scale means that we haven't done enough to be able to connect what we are doing with some of the basic human conditions. And so that is one way to make it less hard, is to remember that we're all part of a much larger ecosystem. And that entire ecosystem is made up of so much diversity. But at the end of the day, we still have mothers, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, life.
Yeah, I see that there's a disconnect between local and scale or global. And we see this playing out, whether you're talking about climate crisis, political divide that we have, not only in this country, but around the world, at some point, it's really hard for us to move beyond our own social circles and kind of see the bigger picture and have this empathetic stance. And so, yeah, I see what you're saying, and I absolutely see that playing out. And I'm wondering, what could we do about it? Because empathy at scale is going to help us solve some of our bigger problems. But I don't have an answer for how.
I think that we can. I think we have a lot of examples in society where we have been able to like have empathy at scale. And this is going to sound super weird, but I think Barbie is a really great example of having it's like the biggest movie in the world right now, and it talks about the female experience in a really deep way, right? And like it helps you build empathy through story. And I think that like empathy, I think stories are what connect us, right? It's like the most powerful thing you can. And one thing I love about today versus when I was a kid, like I couldn't see anyone who looked like me when like on any TV station when I was a kid. And now there's like major comedians who tell my own story. Like there's Aziz Ansari, there's Hassan Minhaj, there's like folks who look like me that I can connect to, I can relate to. And like now you know my experience, right? You understand what it was like to be me growing up because they have made a name for themselves, and we're starting to see more diverse voices on these stages, and we're all connected through story. We can all relate to these things. I think it makes the world smaller in a really beautiful way. So I think the empathy can be done through scale with story, and we see those stories, we connect to those stories. Again, I loved Barbie. I don't know if I was the target audience, but I loved it, and it helped me connect to a story that was not my own.
You're Knuff, just for the record. So thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. Wonderful questions. Sorry that we didn't get to all of them, but we just hope that you have a really valuable Denver Startup Week, and hopefully you can work alongside these amazing innovators. Just be part of society that's asking the question, are we doing this the right way? Are we asking the tough questions? How does it apply to my life and my community? If we all do that, we have the chance to shape the powerful thing that is AI to take our society forward. So thank you. Have a great day.